Hi, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Rhonda Everett, and we've got the entire Rhonda Everett group here today. Marian Cooper.
Good morning.
Jason Curley.
Good morning.
There we go. All right, we are with Comey and Shepherd Realtors in Cincinnati, Ohio, and today we are talking about this trend that has kind of started here, which is this kind of online bidding, auction style listing / pricing strategy to sell your home. Jason, what am I talking about?
All right. So Ohio it's known for being, by Ohio law, a buyer beware state. So sellers and their counsel have historically used this doctrine to kind of let the buyer do their own research. And at the end of the day, if the right amount of research isn't done or you aren't looking in the right places, you could miss something. And I bring that up because there's so many little caveats and so many little ins and outs to this bidding structure that if you really don't do your research, it just at the end of the day, it leaves you with a lot of frustration, frustrated people, sad sellers, sad buyers. And I brought up the website that a lot of these bids have been held on. And if you don't read the fine print, then you could get yourself into a situation where you're out some money, time, effort, energy, and really in the market and in the way things have been over the last few years. Who needs more frustration in real estate? I mean, buyers have been fighting to get in to see a listing, and now they've kind of everything's getting brought back into, I guess, view, and now we have this new thing that's sneaking in and just catching people by surprise. So, so essentially what you do is they list the property. They only make it available to open house viewings. So by law, they have to have, because of renters' rights or tenant rights, they have to have showings available within a 24-hour time period. So if you have a tenant in the property, you have to give 24-hour notice. So they could set one of these listings live and not let showings go for a full day, so that if it were a standard schedule of showing, go out and show it type property, you could make that and give that tenant their 24 hours notice. So they basically set in place open houses throughout that first week that it goes on the market. And also by Ohio law, it states that the house has to be available for showings. And it's really just, it's not as thorough. It's pretty I don't want to say unclear, but it's not as in-depth as we like to see things in real estate, because we're law abiding. We have all these rules and laws in place to protect people. And, when we see something that's not perfectly clear, it kind of irks me, because I want to know everything about it. And there isn't an answer in some cases. And Ohio law states that open house is considered available for showings. So as long as they schedule the first open house within 24 hours of it going live, they're okay to do it. And then it has to have kind of incremental open houses after that. But like I said, if you don't do your research, you see a property that you like, and that's kind of the mode we've all been in is, oh, I like this property. The pictures look nice. Let's go see it. It's in my price range. And then you notify your agent. They book the appointment real quick. Maybe they're on the road. Maybe they're out to dinner with their family. Maybe any other thing that they could be doing to prevent them from getting online at that moment and researching that property. They could be leaving another appointment and, oh, we just found out it's right down that road. Let's go. And they get there and they're surprised, embarrassed even. So, it can make a pretty sticky situation. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Well, Marian, maybe you can kind of tell the folks at home a little bit about just what this is. How does it work?
Okay, well, I know some parts of it. So I got at least 2 different leads, clients calling in wanting to see a particular property that fits the description of what Jason was saying just now. It was for sale by auction. So in the fine print that Jason mentioned of the marketing remarks for agents only, it talked about a timeline for when offers were due and when they would be making a decision by, which in the last couple of years has been pretty common. But what I found to be really interesting about a particular property that had applied this principle with only open house showings was I was getting calls about this from people wanting to see it after that set deadline, and it still showed the property as being available for purchase. It didn't show it pending in contract, pending backup offers, nothing. So, and then Jason, if you want to jump in here and talk about, I didn't click through to see the website, but you did. If you want to jump in here and talk about what that revealed to you. On this
Yes,
property.
absolutely. I would. So basically what it says is that the online bidding starts at, and they list a price, what I've seen, sometimes half of what the home's value is. I saw one that went for 54% above list price. So it was more than half lower than where it should be. But they say where the bidding is going to start. The seller reserves the right to accept, reject any bid. So they can counter as well.
They can counter,
so,
right?
Yeah. At the end of the day, even if you hop on this website, you have to pay a deposit, a $500 deposit, just to get to bid. And then, yes, and that's not always refundable. Because if you were to win and then your financial qualifications didn't match up, then, well, now you've just forfeited that $500 because it becomes non-refundable at that point. The other thing to really, really highlight is that the buyers are agreeing to pay a premium of 3.5% added to the final bid price. So if you bid $500,000 and now you're going to put 3.5% on top of that. So we're talking about $15,000, a little over $15,000 at that point, right?
Yeah,
17,500. So you're adding that on top of the buyer, right? And
the seller's closing costs.
Exactly. You're paying the fee for them using the service as well as the compensation for buyer representation. So you're essentially agreeing to that. And then, it tells you when the bid ends and you can get on the website. This is the one thing that's interesting about it in this bidding situation is that you can get on the website at any point in time and see what the current highest bid is. And you can see where
it is kind of like eBay.
100%. You put in your max bid and then people bid over it and you bid back and forth. And I think you can even do incremental bidding so that you put in your max amount and it bids $1,000 or $1,500 over what the highest bid is until you run out of cap space there. And that's exactly what eBay does. A lot of the bidding websites do that, but we're bidding on a book or a shirt, not a house. It's
a Superman
not
figure.
Where you're going to call home.
Right, exactly. And if eBay's situation, you bid $20 on a book, then you don't get it. You aren't out the $500. You aren't also agreeing to pay the $20 plus 3.5% on top of that. So it's a very irritating situation. So I had some questions that I put together about this, and so do they even come up with the right buyers when they list properties this way?
So obviously, Marian was talking about one that we all had calls about. It was, in an area that we all work. And the people that I talked to were like, it was originally listed at how much? And it's now at $250. And I'm like, okay, well, it's an auction. And they went, oh yeah, those people are insane. Like, I can't believe anyone would pay more than $250 based on what they just saw in the photos.
Yeah. And I know which one you're talking about. And that was weird because they listed it, couldn't sell it, took it off, put it back up for 50,000 less, couldn't sell it, took it back off, and then put it up for half. And at the end of the day, they were nowhere near where they wanted to be. I think they only ended up about 75,000 over the initial the bidding amount, and that was still 175 lower than where they wanted to be. So yeah, they just rejected the offers and went back live on the market as a standard listing. It's listed at a market value price now, and yeah, so to go into what happens at these open houses a little bit, I talked to some agents that had been to some, and essentially you show up, there's a greeter at the door. You're required to give them your information, name, email, phone number. If your agent's there, you give them your agent's name. If you're there by yourself, but you sign in nonetheless. Then you're assigned to another agent that's standing there waiting, and they walk you around the property, answer your questions, make sure they have all your information, you have all the information, and then you're off to the races to bid, or you're walking out of the door completely frustrated because you thought, oh, we could really own this house at 250,000. And in the grand scheme of things, they're looking for 520,000, 550,000. Right. So if you have one of those agents, I know there's some agents out there that haven't done their research, then your agent's walking in there just as surprised and embarrassed and frustrated and, feeling silly about the whole situation because the research hasn't been done. And when these started popping up, we didn't know they existed, or they existed in a different capacity with like a bank-owned property. You could have a bidding system there, but the other thing, when you enter the listing in, you select auction, but not on these. Only if there's going to be a true auction, an auctioneer there. So you don't select auction when you enter in a listing in this bidding system because it's not truly an auction. It's bidding, online bidding. So just another little layer there. No, the house is being listed at half of its market value in a lot of cases. The buyers that are getting notified are shopping at that price point. So who really benefits from these? That's the next question that came up. Who benefits from these eBay style bids?
Well, and you guys can tell me your thoughts, but okay. So number one, the listing agent doesn't have to actually find a price for the property. So they don't have to do their job because we have multiple jobs, but the biggest job we have is pricing that property so that we can market it and reach the correct clients, right? The correct buyers, get them in to make an offer. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And to further clarify, Rhonda, when you say correct, describe specifically, like, let's say I am shopping for a $250,000 house. That's my max budget. I go to this. What am I missing? About $250,000 more. So we're talking about clients who have the ability to pay that actual market value of the house, not me looking to snag a deal, because this is not that market.
Right.
Not yet.
Well, and so the answer I came up with were who really benefits from this. The only people that benefit is the listing agent and whatever other agents they decide to bring into these open houses. Because when you think about how this is not logical at all, because you aren't getting the right buyers in there, you're getting a $250,000 buyer in there. The online bidding website sells this service as a lead generation service. It is a package that helps you generate leads from a listing agent for the listing agent, not for anybody else. That's why they're so keen on getting everybody's information as soon as you walk through the door, because you just went into their database. You just went on their monthly mailer. You just went on every piece of marketing that they can get to you to try to gain you as a client. because they'll set you up with the right, if they're in a team situation, the right buyer's agent, or you met the right buyer's agent there and they just have to prove it to you now that they can get you out there and find the right house for your budget. The seller doesn't benefit. I mean, look at this one case in point we were talking about. The home market value on the home is north of 500,000. It was listed at 250. The highest bid on it was 175,000 less than market value. So what did they do? Rejected it, put it back on the market at market value, just relisted it. At the end of the day, that was it. And so
interesting if these online auction companies and or the listing agents that are doing this, do you think they're offering some type of incentive to those sellers? And who would know? The only person who would know is who ultimately ends up in the contract to purchase. It would have to be disclosed there. So really,
well, I think the incentive to the seller would be the compensation, the buyer agent compensation. If in the agreement they come up with a number that the seller is going to pay in compensation total, and then that listing agent is going to offer this much to the buyer's agent broker, and so there's that 3% or whatever the number is, they don't have to pay that. And then this service usually costs 0.5% of what it costs, what the home sells for. Oh, so we're going to tack that on top of that buyer representation fee too. So now we went from 3 to 3.5%. So, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you don't have to pay for buyer representation. So instead of 6%, whatever that number is agreed on, you're only going to pay 3%. So we just saved you this much money. And all it's going to take is a week of your time. And guess what? If we don't get the right price, forget them. We'll just go back on the market. No big deal. It's worth a shot, right?
And so my question would be, who pays for the service, or does it not matter because everybody's paying a $500 fee? Like if they don't accept an offer and they just go back on the market, like, you know. So without
like signing up and joining this bidding website
platform,
you can't really get that exact number. And from what I can gather, it's either 1% of the sell price is that amount, or it's a flat rate if it doesn't sell. And that 1% is split between buyer and seller, or it's a 0.5%. It goes all to the buyer. And then if it doesn't sell, there's a flat rate for the service. So, and who knows, that may be tacked on to that agreement for putting it back on the market. Mm-hmm. They may pay it anyways. It may come out.
You know, and I guess my question is, you go through all of that process. At some point, we still have to do a real offer, like on our contract.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
So do you, when you enter a bid, you know, like even if you're doing a HUD bid, which mm-hmm. is a blind bid process, you're putting in, hey, how much closing costs are we asking the seller to pay? How much money are we putting down? What kind of financing is there? You know, are there those kinds of questions in this process?
You just win the bid. Then you have a time period. If I remember correctly, it's 24 hours to submit your offer from the end. When you win, they take the top 3 from there. That's all the sellers get to see is the top 3, and the contract to purchase is attached with that bid. Here's your 3 top bids with their contract to purchase. Now you can dig down through the contract to purchase and see if, hey, this bid beat this one by $1,000, but they have better, the contract is written better, or the contingencies are more to my liking, or the financing is better, or it's cash versus whatever they're financing. So at that point, you win the bid, or your top 3 in the bid. That's only winning you a list, like an offer presentation.
Wow. So Marian, let me ask you, when you've had multiple offers, if you only looked at the top 3 prices, Would you have missed a really good offer that your sellers would have wanted?
Absolutely. Yeah. The last listing that I was the listing agent for, the financing type and the amount of closing costs that they asked for, it still would have been top 3. So they still would have seen it, but had I not explained it to them and done the math for them, they may not have selected that offer, and it may not have worked out in their favor nearly as much, because on top of it being the best net for the sellers, the people were so, and their agent were so agreeable to work with. We got like 45 days post-closing occupancy. I mean,
put a value on that.
Exactly. And you got the benefit of getting to talk to the agent, and you may have been there for an open house to meet the clients, or whatever that situation was. But when you're just in an online bidding platform, that all goes away. All the personalization goes away. Now, I understand maybe for a fair housing situation, that makes perfect sense. We're just looking at dollars and cents, and you take any of the other emotional stuff out. But again, I feel like 45 days of occupancy for a seller who is still living in the property, that can be make or break, and just there's so many aspects of our contract that if we don't see the full picture, our clients lose.
Mm-hmm. And, in that same listing and sale that I was just talking about, if I'm recalling correctly, they waived inspections, and the loan type had an appraisal inspection that required some repairs, but again, worked out really well for my clients. My clients were able to do all the required repairs themselves, partially because, one of the sellers had a skilled trade that they were certified in. So that always helps. But yeah, so my question is then, Jason, did you get far enough with this one listing that we were speaking about specifically that was this eBay auction type of listing? Did it say, did they allow inspections?
They didn't have any restrictions in the agent remarks or on the listing that said, anything that the seller would like to see in the contract to purchase. It was all bidding business. So on this one, I thought it would be interesting to reach out to the listing agent and just see what kind of response I could get, what kind of interaction I could get, because at the end of the day in real estate, there's something that's it's co-opetition. It's Toyota and Scion. It's Nissan and Infiniti. They make one part that fits both cars because both businesses are trying to get to an end result of selling a vehicle. So both agents are trying to get to an end result of helping these people get into the house that's right for them, or sell the house that they are moving for whatever reason. So it eliminates the co-opetition where we can cooperate in a competitive market, work together to get to that end result, because it's all bidding business. That's essentially all I ever got out of the listing agent was a copy and paste of the agent remarks in a text message. Didn't ever answer the phone or return a call from a voicemail. Only responded in text and only copy and pasted. That was it. And back to what we were talking about in the contract to purchase, I think it was best said by Karen Schlosser, and highest isn't always best, because there's so many different aspects to the contract. You can't just rely on price to be the best. It's not.
Absolutely not. And I feel like there are so many parts of that help you determine if you have the right buyer. And it's been great to be able to see like 20 offers or even 10 offers. And those sellers have been able to choose. Like, okay, well, this one's going to give me occupancy. This one's going to waive inspections. This one's going to waive appraisal and inspection. And this one does have the highest price, but they've done all these other things, which like they just don't feel always comfortable. And then sometimes they go, you know what? It's worth taking the risk. I'll take that extra $10,000. And if it doesn't work out, we'll go back on the market, or maybe one of these other people will still be around and they can buy the house. But we're going to risk it for this money. Yeah.
And but the big piece of what you said was that they have the choice. They get to see all of their options. I mean, what do we do as agents? We give our clients every option and the right amount of information so that they can make a decision, an informed decision, and they can have peace of mind in that decision and move forward on their journey. So you're eliminating a prime factor in the reason why people depend on real estate agents every day.
Agreed. Now, really quickly, because we're starting to run out of time, but if we look at the buyer side, we've touched on it a little bit, but we know, okay, A, they're going to pay a price to just make an offer. B, they're going to have to pay their own, essentially, commissions, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
They may or may not have an opportunity to ask for seller paid closing costs or any of that, because we don't have enough,
right,
information. But just that experience of them having to go to an open house, may or may not be able to see this property with their own representation. What else do you guys see as issues on the buy side?
I think it puts us right back in 2020 with 15-minute showings. How are you going to arguably make the biggest purchase decision in your life from an open house, from 15 minutes walking around with other people in there? And there's been many times, and I'm sure you both can speak to this as well, but there's been many times we walk through a property, and because we see them every day, we pick out an obvious defect, or we pick out something that's going on with the house, and our buyers think, oh, well, I would have never known that a foggy window wasn't just dirty, or that haze on the window was the UV protectant layer that has failed, and the window may need to be replaced. So there's any number of things that your representation that you know and trust should be there with you. And I don't know, it eliminates that opportunity and puts us right back in 2020. So that's a tough part for me. Not the only one, but that's a tough one.
Marian, what do you see as issues on the buy side?
I just feel like the buyers feel like they're in the dark from the time they see it and work up the courage to call me, the agent, and ask about it. And then I give them information over the phone. And this is just information I can find in the listing online at my fingertips. And then all these doubts crop up inside their head and it spirals. And so they're like, oh, well, this whole thing makes me nervous. So then does that put them off of buying altogether?
Well, and I would agree. Back in the day, as of like 2016, 2017, 2018, when we did have lender-owned properties, there were a few websites that were doing the same type of thing for the banks. And I would say, people saw this low price and saw, oh, it's an auction. Okay, that's fine. And then as soon as they started to read the website, it was like, okay, forget it. That's just, there's a premium here. There's something there that I don't know if I can get out of it. I don't know. There were just too many questions. And I felt like a lot of people just would be overwhelmed. And I could only help them so much because we had to deal with an online system. So it was just, more of a challenge. It wasn't us walking them through, here's the contract, now we have this new layer of stuff that they had to get through. And so I kind of feel like sellers are limiting the number of buyers by going this direction. You're putting new roadblocks up that were not there before.
Yeah. You find somebody that has a stretch budget or can get a gift from someone to bring them up to that budget. I mean, what if you just started with your home listed at the right price and had really only the right buyers come through, buyers that could actually pay for and enjoy a property like that it would be within reason. And yeah, so at the end of the day, if you're starting your home search as a buyer, beware, be attentive, look at the listing, read what the remarks are. They aren't just bells and whistles and, skipping through a candy land. It's not just agent talk trying to get you to come see the property. There's some real things that can be disclosed in there. And if we know about them, if the buyer takes the time to learn about them, then it can set us up in a much better situation. If you have been searching for a while and you get a property that comes up and you look at it, we do an off-site inspection, right? Like that's our responsibility as buyers and buyer representation. That off-site inspection requires, like it says, the properties around it. When you look at what's around the property, if the house across the street sold for double and the house next door sold for double and the house on the other side sold for double, then there may be something more to it. So if you're a buyer that's been shopping for a while, take a few minutes to read those agent remarks, do your offsite inspection, figure out what's around it. And sometimes we've been looking in that area for so long, we just know that, the grocery store's at the end of the street and the school's around the corner and the shopping mall's over here. So we don't get as in-depth with those type of offsite inspections. And it's really, there's red flags that should say, hey, dig into this because there's something else going on here.
Marian, final thoughts?
So, shameless plug, but it's the truth. Your buyer's agent matters. Don't go looking to buy a house without a real estate agent like one of us from Rhonda Everett Group or one of us. We do our research. So rarely would you ever walk into a showing with any of the three of us and not know all the basic things, like your agent remarks, like the comps. And those are huge. Call us. Don't go in there without your own agent with your best interests. You need us. Use us, please.
Mm-hmm. Property disclosure too. Add that to the list. You're going to have somebody walking in with you that's read the property disclosure, knows what they've said about it, knows if they sent a waiver because they don't have a property disclosure. So, but you'll have those ins and outs.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Definitely. And now, obviously, when we are doing showings from sunup to sundown, there are days when we may not have every single bit of information, but we can pull it up while we're there in the property.
At our fingertips.
Our phones have so much information on them. But I do think that these guys are correct. Like getting that information up front, really looking at what you're getting into. I will say that one property that we were kind of talking about, I believe it was in a flood zone and had zero backyard.
Mm-hmm.
All front yard and all river.
What was that?
All front yard and all river.
Yes, a beautiful view of the river, but no backyard. And as soon as I mentioned that to my clients, they went, oh, well, that's not what we want anyway.
Yeah.
Just takes a second.
Yeah, there was a couple of bidding listings ago that just from the pictures, you look at it and you're like, somebody just remodeled that kitchen and it was probably 75 to 100,000. So why would they be selling at this price in that neighborhood? And then you start reading and so just the pictures gave away that there was some kind of something attached to it. And it's like red flag, red light, stop, hey, hang on, I gotta do some more research.
Right. And I do think that price, as much as we don't want our sellers to just judge something on price, same with buyers. Like, price is a starting point, but it doesn't always tell the whole picture.
True.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. And we are going to have to make sure that you like, share, and subscribe, and let us know what you think of this format. I mean, we've never really done this before. Would you prefer to do a live stream and be able to comment and, make remarks while we have our conversation? We'd love to know. Make sure that you comment below, and all of our contact information is in the description. So come back and be with us next time.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.